The internet has been screaming that this is the greatest Spider-Man movie ever made, and honestly, I was a little skeptical about the hype, guys, but after finally seeing the movie and twice now, I am here to tell you that Tom Holland has officially beat both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and Marvel just delivered a street-level masterpiece. Today, we are going to be breaking down the entire movie from start to finish. Let's get straight into it. So I have to say, like I said, I was skeptical about this movie being like that good, but when I heard people talking about this being the best Spider-Man movie, or just one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time, and saying that it's just easily better than the last movie, I was thinking kind of like, man, it's a little bit hard to believe, but after watching it, and as somebody who absolutely loved No Way Home, I can confidently tell you that the internet's hype is just 100% on point for this movie, guys. And this was easily the greatest Spider-Man movie ever made. This was better than all the Tobey movies, co-part of Nostalgia Fans conversation for another time, but this is also better than everything that Andrew Garfield did, and Tom Holland absolutely outdid himself in this movie. This is one of the best Marvel and superhero movies ever made, in my personal opinion, and I'd have to think about it a little bit more, man, but I think off the top of my head, this is right behind Infinity War and Civil War. Either way, for some more general thoughts about the entire movie, guys, I know a lot of people really loved the fact that this was like a smaller movie. You'd hear a lot of people talking about how for a long time they've wanted a street level Spider-Man movie. I understand that. I get that. And that's definitely always fair to want, but I've just never really cared about what kind of movie it was. I'm always easy. Entertain me. And I know I just don't personally like pure romance stories, and I don't like those slice of life anime shows. Other than that, I don't care. Just make a good movie, entertain me. So I wasn't like thrilled about being this a street level Spider-Man like everybody else was, but I thought that they did a phenomenal job with it. They told a really great street level Spider-Man movie. And I also saw a lot of people talking about how cool the new suit is. That's something that I also don't really care about. You know, he looked like Spider-Man, and that's good enough for me. I will admit to you, though, I did like the detail where you can actually end up seeing Peter's eyes through it, but that's about it. I don't care about the suit. Just, again, entertain me. For the characters, I loved the lineup. I loved Spider-Man, Frank, Jean was phenomenal, and I really, really liked how Ned and MJ fit into everything. I also never watched the Punisher show, so this was my first time actually seeing him, and I know he isn't always like this, but for this movie, man, he was great. The humor was top tier. I loved the banter with Peter. I loved the dynamic between them where you had like one character who's like, I always kill the bad guys, and you mix that guy in with the guy who literally spent his whole last movie giving all of the bad guys a second chance of redemption. So they were great together. As for Sadie Sink, she was majorly impressive. I was also skeptical about that too when I heard about that she was cast to be Jean. She was good in Stranger Things, but I wasn't sure how much I'd really like that transition over to the MCU. I've always thought she was a little bit overhyped, but she played her character absolutely perfectly, man. She was so good to the point where now I can't believe that I was even doubting her. There really is nothing beyond that. She was perfect, and I cannot wait to see what Marvel also does with her again. The movie had the perfect balance of a perfect cast, exciting action, heartfelt moments, great humor, and I forgot to talk about Hulk being part of the movie too. He was great. And actually, you know what? We'll save it for when we actually get to the part with the Hulk. Let's dive into this movie from start to finish. So our movie obviously kicks off showing what Peter has just been up to since the entire world ended up forgetting about him. I think that they did an excellent job showing us just how, mundane in a sense that his life was. He was fighting crime, he was going home, he was watching for more crime, visiting Aunt May's grave, and just watching what Ned and MJ were up to on social media. He would repeat the same thing every day, and the movie did a really good job at showing us just how lonely that he's become and how he's also ignoring that he's kind of suffering in a sense. So he was just constantly trying to keep himself busy, putting everything behind him, and that makes sense, right? That's what you do as men. It's commendable in a way, But depending on the man, you can only hold that up for so long when you've been through trauma like that. So we see a montage of him fighting crime until we end up getting to that tank scene. It's just where the entire movie ended up kicking off, right? He had that fun moment with Frank just telling him to go home. That was really funny. And I like that he never ran out of guns, Just, again, very funny, right? But this is where we're introduced to Jean. But at this point, I personally didn't know that it was Jean. I knew that she was going to be part of the movie, but for all I know, that just hey, here's a little hint that the X-Men are coming, I didn't know even that Jean had powers to just control random people. I don't know. So, This was all very suspenseful for me. And you know what, too? I might as well touch on this now. Something else that really, really worked for me about this movie was the fact that, like, you had so little spoiled in the trailers. We didn't know that Jean was here or what she was doing. We didn't know that we were going to get that Raging Hulk scene that we're going to be talking about. We didn't know what was happening with MJ. Modern trailers would have shown us all of that. Modern trailers would have hyped up, look, we got Raging Hulk back, or they would have shown Jean controlling MJ, right? So a lot of this movie really worked for me because I didn't know what was happening or where this movie was going a lot of the time. And before you say it, I'm on the internet. I can't just avoid spoilers, okay? I'm talking about you, Todd, if you happen to be watching this video. Okay? But anyways, guys, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Spider-Man, he can't stop the tank. It's rolling through the city until he breaks into the Department of Damage Control where Jean ended up getting caught, but she just ended up body hopping around until she escaped. It was a fun introduction, but I didn't know who was behind all of that at that point, and Peter just, wanted to find out what was going on with this brand new mystery. And this is where the movie brings us to another very pleasant surprise with Yelena being introduced in her brand new office. The whole thing was very funny. We got some intel on the villain a little bit, but the girls got their thirst trap scene. Yelena was hilarious with all the small potato stuff. My wife and I are still calling things small potato, I like the hot tub, like, that was literally at our office too, and they ended up calling her later. Like, it was all good. Again, very fun, very nice surprise to see her. But after that, Peter ended up visiting Damage Control where he's looking for this thing called VMAX. And it's crazy what it ended up being, but I was kind of like put off at first a little bit because I was immediately like, oh god, no. Not another V1 or Compound V situation. The boys dropped the ball on that entire thing. Not again. But what's funny is that the guy in charge of Damage Control said that he had no idea what Peter was talking about, but like, the movie made it obvious that he was really sketchy, right? And of course, we're probably like, everybody watching the movie was probably just collectively like, yeah, okay, dude. Yeah, right. You don't know what it is, but just for him to be telling the truth. It's very funny in hindsight, but after the first time seeing him, I think it was pretty obvious that Damage Control was the bad guys. So after that, Peter ended up encountering Ned and MJ for the first time in the movie, and like I said in my intro, I thought that they handled everything related to these three perfectly, dude. Peter happened to see Ned, so he followed them to their apartment where they were having a party. He finally ended up getting to have a conversation with them, which is very awkward, and man, Tom Holland did such a phenomenal job just showing the hurt on his face without needing to say it to the viewers. His acting alone, and for so many movies, his acting alone really always sells so many scenes. So he took such simple conversations and showed us heartbreak. I love what he did there, man. He kept that up for the entire movie. He's very consistent. And dude, something that I also didn't catch was that Peter, after that whole scene, was thinking about deleting himself. Deleting to put it nicely, after seeing that MJ had a boyfriend. But first of all, with that, like, what'd you expect? Like, did you just... In her mind, she never had a boyfriend. How could you just assume that she's gonna remain single? So, it was a bit dumb to be shocked by all of that, but I guess it wouldn't hurt any less, right? But it wasn't until I was watching TikToks after the movie that I saw that he was kind of swinging around and considering not shooting another web and just ending up falling to his death. It sucks that I didn't catch that. It would have made the scene hit a lot harder. I thought it was a pretty nice touch either way. The whole thing hit pretty good. And all of this kind of brings us to what some people are calling a subplot. I disagree with that. I thought they handled this whole entire thing very well, and I didn't really see it as something that was kind of put on the back burner. Because of his isolation, I guess that he was becoming more of an arachnid. They talked about his DNA, and he just woke up that next morning, heightened senses, organic webs coming from his wrist. He was grossed out by that, right? To sum it up, he was starting to become more primal and animalistic, right? It's cool that his eyes even go black. That was a nice touch. Like, it was cool seeing him not being able to handle it when they're just like too many sounds around him, too many sensory things going on, right? That they did a really good job with as well. The movie did a good job at making us understand exactly what Peter was feeling with the headaches, the overload of the sounds, him losing control. I liked it all, man. I saw a lot of people saying that, and not everybody obviously, but enough of a conversation where it felt cheap and stuff like that. I didn't notice that. I liked it a lot. But this ended up being more of an issue for him because then he was already struggling to even swing a web, and then he had to go take on Scorpion, who was being controlled by Jean. And for Scorpion, dude, that is another one that I saw a lot of people disappointed with because he ended up playing such a minor part after hearing all of this stuff about Scorpion. I personally like that for two reasons. The first being because I liked that the trailer ended up throwing this off. And secondly, I know this is my own issue, and guys, I'm sorry, there's a bug in the room. I'm not dirty, I promise. Anyways, it's the choice of actor. I love Nacho. I'm sorry, I don't know his real name, right? Nacho from Better Call Saul. He played such an iconic role so well that I would struggle seeing him play anything else. It was weird seeing him that short time that we did. And he was even just like being mind controlled too, you know? I know that's my own personal issue, but it would have taken me out a little bit, man. And it sucks because the guy, he's such a good actor. He played his big role way too well for me. But anyways, we finally see Peter losing control because of the mutations that he's experiencing and almost ended up killing a police officer. Everything that we saw there I thought was a great introduction to how Peter was changing. And this takes us to the scene where Peter ends up going to talk to Bruce Banner. There isn't really much to break down about this one. Like, it was fun seeing Bruce separate from the Hulk, which, again, we're going to talk about that Hulk scene, but it was fun seeing that class kind of look at him as a star. Pretty much the entire point of this was to have Peter kind of like, to get that message that Bruce ended up telling him, and it was something like, well, Peter, what if you're trying to suppress something that needs to express himself, you know? Or itself, excuse me. I don't recall the exact quote, but Banner ended up telling him that, and that was like the whole point of it. But as we continue from that, we move on to, in my opinion, was actually the best part of the entire movie. And it was the best part because I fell for it. Peter finds Jean again, and she basically threatens to go after MJ. That whole thing was great, but they just ended up racing to get over to her. Peter ended up saving her, not knowing that she was already Jean. And dude, when they got to that rooftop and they had that whole thing where she acted like MJ, they ended up kissing and suddenly she remembered everything. It was so heartwarming, you know? But I thought it was stupid at the same time. I turned to my wife and I was like, really? The magical spell is broken with True Love's kiss? Tom Holland was selling it so well, you know? And dude, the guy's such a good actor. He was making you feel it, man. But then my wife turned to me all skeptical and was like, I don't think that's her. Just for MJ to then go ahead and be like, go ahead, Peter, touch her. Chills, dude. I fell for it completely. The way that Jean ended up playing with his heart was phenomenal. It was so dark. Peter was so happy. He got to kiss her, but now accidentally just ended up using her body. Like, incredible, dude. Absolutely incredible. I sat there in awe. Like, it was so dark. I loved it. Then Jean made it worse because she threw her body off the rooftop, and then we had another really great scene to watch where Tom had to do that same thing that Andrew did with Gwen, right? And also, wouldn't it have been crazy too if they actually killed her that way, man? For MJ to wake up mid-fall and for her to actually end up falling to her death, that would have been wild. But I did like where they ended up taking the story, right? That whole part was probably the best scene in the entire movie for me, guys. I love stuff like that, where they don't hold back. I actually just started watching ReZero, and supposedly there's a lot of horrible stuff like that in there where the main character goes through a lot. Hopefully I can get my fill with that, but anyways, after that, Peter ended up taking MJ over to Frank's house, which made for some really fun banter with just, you know, him saying that he needed to keep MJ safe while dodging claymores, traps, everything that was there. And we have just more of Peter and Frank arguing. That was all really fun. It was a good time, but we do take a pause once they actually get inside that house because we move on to a very fun scene where he finds out what Jean's up to. And this is just another thing that I loved about this, man. It wasn't spoiled to us that the Hulk was going to be back in his true form. Jean ended up infiltrating Damage Control, and with her, she brought Bruce. Spider-Man shows up, and basically, all she does is she just throws that thing at him and says, have fun. And of course, we all knew immediately what she meant when she did that, man. So he finds Bruce, who is actively turning into the Hulk, and dude, it was so nice to see, guys. The Hulk was always one of my favorite characters in Marvel, and they just, over the years, they have completely butchered him. They made him a little baby, they turned him into a joke, they turned him into a big coward. They did everything they could have to ruin a really great character, in my opinion. We finally got to see him big, scary, angry again. The transformation scene was very dark. Hulk was scary, and he was just looking to literally rage. We even saw that clap attack too. When was the last time that we've seen that? So not only was this a pleasant surprise, Marvel finally restored a character to his original glory that so many of us loved. There was even a moment where Peter looked at him and even said something to the extent of like, whoa, I didn't know you could get that big, you know? They finally made him terrifying again. So this entire scene was great. I loved Frank showing up too. Again, made for some funny moments. Punisher made the movie in a way, you know? But it wasn't overdone, you know? The movie sprinkled in just the right amount of humor into it. But Peter, at the end of the day, they ended up getting through to Banner and then caught Jean right as she was breaking into that vault with the people and then ended up taking her into custody. When Peter ends up going back to Frank's home, he runs into MJ, who ended up finding the letter. And dude, this was another scene that was very difficult to watch. Has anyone else just been like watching TikTok after TikTok where it's just like literally just a sad music with a quote saying, "I don't love you"? Just like MJ and Peter, of course, like they ended up having that tough conversation that was a long time coming. And what I really liked about this is that she didn't give him a chance or just she was reminded by a kiss or anything like that. She doubled down. She literally told him that she's grateful, but she doesn't know him. She's not that same girl. She doesn't have the memories and she does not love him. I liked that this whole thing isn't being solved so easily. Peter was barely holding back tears. MJ had to break his heart again, and he had to end up taking her home after that. But then the movie took that entire scene and actually made us feel both like sad and a bit warm inside because MJ invited him in to see Ned. Then we have that whole thing with them just like joking around, actually acting like best friends again, and actually I'll talk about this too. Something else that I didn't notice was MJ when she drew with the photo of the two guys playing Legos. She drew him in his suit from another movie. I was actually a little bit skeptical when she remembered like how to draw his face so perfectly after seeing it once, and saw it once very quickly too. So the gears were turning for me a little bit there, that she might be subconsciously a little bit, the memories might be there, but I didn't notice the suit though. So that's also a nice touch. And we'll talk about whether or not Ned ended up remembering him, but it's one of the reasons why I have my theory about this whole thing. Again, we'll talk about it towards the end of the video. But the movie, again, just took us from a point of heartbreak to some heartwarming moments watching them all together. They did a very good job at it. Like, I loved watching Peter just go like, "Are you kidding? This is the best, most fun I've had in years." Things like that, right? But throughout the conversation Peter was having with MJ, he learns that the dude from Damage Control ended up lying to him about what Sarah meant, and that was told to him, right? So he realized that Jean might have been the good guy in all of this. And with that, he also had another really funny conversation with Yelena, and just like, "I'm just happy the sad man has friends." We see a backstory with Jean's sister actually end up getting captured, and we move on to the final fight of the movie where Peter ends up joining MJ in Damage Control. And I might as well start with Jean in the chair because a lot of people, they were expressing disappointment about how VMAX was handled. Dude, I thought that was phenomenal. Jean was getting tortured, asking about her sister, being experimented on like, the X-Men are, and we kept getting those little hints dropped onto us like, well, this is your sister's legacy. Honor her sacrifice. And it wasn't until Jean was getting tortured, and then when she looked up, she saw that VMAX, right? She saw that VMAX was just the vent label that was half ripped off. How were people disappointed in that? I'm honestly glad it wasn't another Compound V. But for Jean to do all of this, to follow a lead all this time, to thinking that her sister was still alive with this thing, just for the last thing that her sister saw before she died while being tortured, just a little label up there, how were people unhappy with that? It's tragic. But anyways, once she realizes, she freaks out and she levels up. She freezes, takes control of everybody within a kilometer, and just goes on to take on Peter, who just ended up breaking into the building, right? And now another thing that we need to talk about this whole thing is like Jean's little flaw in her logic. Spider-Man came in, he apologized, he wants to help her. She just goes, "You were with them. You put me here." Like, okay, Jean, like what did you expect him to think? You possessed a bunch of innocent people, flagged them for crimes, tortured Peter mentally in like the worst way that you possibly could, threw the love of his life off a building, caused God knows how many casualties with the tank and the Hulk and who knows what else. What did you expect Peter to do? As a superhero, who should he logically side with? I know this wouldn't happen because like obviously the movie needs a plot, but how about going to Spider-Man instead of just dropping little hints that Damage Control might not be so great? You could just like, I don't know, talk to him. You have no right to be lashing out at him and or not forgiving him for getting it wrong. Regardless of the motives, you were the bad guy. So she takes the hand to fight Peter, and this is another thing that I saw people talking about, how the hand was underutilized. They probably were, but I didn't even know who they were until the movie was over and I was watching content afterwards and people talking about the hand. The fight was cool though, I'll say that. You had this entire thing that needed to happen with Peter, finally taking his inhibitor off, letting the arachnid DNA flow through him with like, the organic webs to make him more powerful and more agile. To be honest, there's really nothing else to say besides like it was a cool, fun scene to watch. It was well choreographed, well done in general. But then Peter, of course, he ends up breaking in and finding Jean. I can't lie, man. Part of me was very satisfied watching her hold that glass up to the dude, like, and he was all fearful. I love me a good revenge story. But Peter ended up letting her into his mind, and this was actually the one miss for me, guys, with the movie. Jean went inside and got the whole Aunt May pep talk, and while it was nice, why was it like her that got through to her? She went in like how many people's minds? Like, I would have liked it more if they just kept it a conversation between Peter and Jean. But like, I don't know, with both their situations and being so lonely, losing people, I think that would make more sense. But it wasn't nearly like a bad thing. It was just the only thing that didn't really like touch me, you know? I did like what came after though. Actually, hang on. Okay, hang on 1 second. Like, did anybody else also kind of get the feeling that they were about to like each other a little bit? I thought they might have started setting that up, but maybe I don't think that's where they were going. I was thinking it at the time. They'd be a good couple, man. Hot take, better than Peter and MJ. But it looks like they're setting up for MJ to get her memories back with this whole thing. Anyways, at the time watching the scene though, we didn't know that. But anyways, I did love how they concluded this. I was waiting for the sniper shot from Frank, right? We saw it coming. We saw they were setting it up. We saw him slowly zooming in. Peter ended up using his new heightened senses while they were in the mine to hear the bullet, and he ends up taking it for Jean. They, again, did such a great job at making you really feel that moment. And I knew that Spider-Man wasn't going to die, but they actually, like, really made you consider the idea. Especially with, you had this whole thing with Tom Holland supposedly not wanting to play the character anymore. If they actually killed him off, that would have gone so hard. But I did love what they did over here, okay? I loved that Jean took over. She breathed for him until he ended up getting taken care of. We have another really funny and heartwarming scene at the same time, seeing both Spider-Man in and outside the hospital. Spider-Man gets to see anybody loving him, you know. He makes friends with Frank, learned the names of his officers' kids, and the movie ended perfectly, dude. Left us off with a little bit of a cliffhanger. So, the big question, did Ned actually remember Peter? Peter ran into Ned at the store, gave him a little handshake a try, just for Ned's muscle memory to end up kicking in. And then he looks up and just says, Peter, as if he remembered. Guys, I think he did. There's been so much conversation surrounding this, from it being like as simple as muscle memory can unlock the actual memories, from like people talking about Doctor Strange actually having a failsafe in the spell. And there's also people thinking that he recognized Flower Guy as Spider-Man. The theories are endless, okay? Guys, I don't think Ned looked up with joy because he connected the name Peter with Spider-Man. He looked like the memory just kind of flicked back on. It looked like an I remember expression. I think the movie showed us MJ crying, her drawing the old suit and showing us the handshake to show us that those memories are perhaps dormant. They maybe just need a little reminder. It could be that Strange's spell wiped everybody's episodic memory, maybe. He could have just wiped the facts, the faces, the events that were stored in the hippocampus. Perhaps he missed any, like, procedural memory that would kind of control any autopilot actions, something like the handshake, right? So, as Ned's muscles perhaps executed the routine, his brain might have accidentally been forced to complete the missing context. So, maybe it just unlocked the dormant files that the spell put away. So, while I think all the theories have validity to them, this is my prediction to what happened. I think he remembered. Either way, it ended off on a banger of a cliffhanger, and it's been very fun seeing everybody talk about this, theorize about this, but he has to remember, dude. That's where I'm at. But we also have another end credit scene over here where we see another Spider-Man out in space. Who knows, man? This could be another version of Spider-Man, whether that's like Toby, Andrew, Miles, it could be Battleworld, it could be Venom. It could literally be any of those things. My guess was Venom because it was out in space. That's all I was thinking, but it also literally could be those other things too. Overall, I thought the movie was excellent, guys. It is, in my opinion, not only the best Spider-Man movie, but it is one of the best Marvel movies that we have ever seen and one of the best superhero movies we've ever seen. But what exactly was that best moment from Marvel? If you want to talk a little bit more about that, why don't you check out this tier list that we made, ranking all of the best moments from the Infinity Saga. I'd love to have you over there. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and thank you so much for your time today. Take care, everybody.